In 1999, the quaint town of Harmony Creek seemed to be frozen in time. Its paved streets meandered through charming clapboard houses painted in soft pastel hues, and the inviting aroma of freshly baked bread from Mrs. Miller's bakery mingled with the sweet scent of honeysuckle that adorned every yard. It was the kind of place where mothers called out their children's names from open windows to summon them for dinner, where the mailman knew every family by name, and where secrets lasted only as long as it took for the next piece of gossip to circulate. Liberty Elementary School stood proudly in the center of town, a two-story building with cheerful yellow walls and sky-blue window frames. Every morning its hallways echoed with the patter of small feet and the joyful chorus of children's voices, blending into a symphony of laughter and playful mischief. On the second floor, in classroom 2B, taught the most beloved teacher in the entire school. Eleanor Vance, 32 years old, possessed that rare blend of sweetness and firmness that only the best educators manage to master. Her light brown hair was always neatly pulled back in a perfect ponytail, secured with a velvet headband that changed color to match her dress. She had a habit of wearing short-sleeved floral dresses in soft tones, always paired with knitted cardigans that she crafted herself on Sunday afternoons. Her shoes were comfortable yet elegant brown leather loafers, perfect for gliding silently through the school hallways when the children were deeply engrossed in their assignments. What most drew attention to Eleanor was her key ring, a small, elegant silver rectangle with her name gracefully engraved in cursive letters, Eleanor Vance. She always wore it dangling from her right wrist, and as she walked through the halls or gestured while explaining a lesson, the key ring produced a soft, melodious jingle that had become the signature sound of her presence. The children had learned to recognize that sound from afar, and when they heard it approaching down the hallway, they automatically straightened in their desks and quieted down. Eleanor lived alone in a small, cozy cottage on Elm Street, just 3 blocks from the school. It was a modest but inviting home, with turquoise-painted window frames and a small front garden where she cultivated vibrant red geraniums and fragrant mint. Every morning, precisely at 7 o'clock, she would leave her house walking towards the school, greeting neighbors who were watering their plants or sweeping their sidewalks. It was a routine as predictable as the sunrise. Among all her students, there was one who held a special place in her heart, though Eleanor was too professional to show it openly. Ethan Miller was a 9-year-old boy with large, curious eyes, perpetually messy black hair, and a smile that lit up the entire classroom. He was the son of Mr. Charles, who worked at the textile mill on the outskirts of town, and Mrs. Rose, Harmony Creek's most skilled baker. Ethan possessed that natural intelligence that manifested in unexpected questions and the ability to connect seemingly unrelated ideas. Every afternoon after the dismissal bell rang and the other children rushed out the door like small hurricanes, Ethan would linger in the classroom. Officially, he helped Eleanor erase the blackboard, arrange the chairs, and organize the books on the shelf. But in reality, those moments had become private learning sessions, where Eleanor taught him things that went beyond the school curriculum. She spoke to him about planets, about distant countries, about famous writers, and about the importance of never ceasing to ask questions. "Curiosity is the engine of knowledge, Ethan," Eleanor would tell him as she cleaned the blackboard with precise circular motions. "Never stop asking yourself why things are the way they are." Ethan absorbed every word like a sponge. At home, his parents worked so much that they barely had time to help him with his homework, so Eleanor had become his intellectual guide and, in a way, a complimentary maternal figure. She had noticed his potential from the very first day of class and had decided to nurture it with the dedication of someone planting a tree, knowing it would bear fruit in the future. Tuesday, June 15, 1999, dawned differently. The sky was covered with gray clouds that threatened rain, and an unusual wind swept down from the hills, bringing with it a strange scent, like damp earth and withered flowers. It was the kind of morning that made dogs hide under tables and mothers keep their children closer to home. At 7 o'clock, as every day, the neighbors on Elm Street waited to see Eleanor's familiar figure walking towards the school. But the street remained empty. Mr. Johnson, who always watered his plants at that hour, looked towards Eleanor's house and noticed that the blue windows remained closed, the curtains drawn, with no sign of movement inside. At Liberty Elementary School, Principal Carol Reed, a robust 50-year-old woman with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, waited until 8:30 before truly becoming concerned. Eleanor was the most punctual teacher in the entire school. She always arrived at 7:45 to prepare her materials and review the day's lessons. Her unannounced absence was completely unusual. The children in classroom 2B waited in their desks, restless and confused. Ethan pressed his nose against the window overlooking the town square, desperately searching for his teacher's figure among the people walking to their jobs. But Eleanor did not appear. The familiar jingle of her keyring did not echo in the hallways. At 9 in the morning, when Eleanor's absence became undeniable, Principal Carol Reed sent janitor Mr. Michael to knock on her door. Mr. Michael was an older man, 65 years old, who had worked at the school for over 20 years. He had known Eleanor since she arrived as a young, nervous teacher, and had seen her become the most respected educator in town. When Mr. Michael returned to the school half an hour later, his wrinkled face showed deep concern. "The house is locked, Principal," he reported, taking off his work cap. "I knocked on the door, called her name, even peeked through the windows. Everything is silent, as if no one has been there for days. The curtains are drawn, and there's no light inside." Principal Carol decided to make a phone call, but in 1999 not everyone had a home phone, and Eleanor was one of those people. Her only emergency contact was her sister Carol, who lived in New York City and worked as a secretary in a government office. Meanwhile, in classroom 2B, the children began to show signs of anxiety. Some cried silently, others asked constant questions about when their teacher would arrive. Ethan remained silent, but his mind raced. He remembered the conversation from the day before, when Eleanor had promised to teach him to play the recorder after the summer break. "We'll learn together, Ethan," she had told him, with that warm smile that lit up her entire face. "I don't play very well either, but we can practice together in the afternoons." Eleanor never broke her promises. Never. Eleanor never broke her promises. Never. The principal had to improvise quickly. She divided the children from classroom 2B among the other teachers, and sent several parents to search for Eleanor throughout the town. They visited the pharmacy where she bought her allergy medication, the bookstore where she acquired school supplies, the market where she did her weekend shopping, and even the small church in Harmony Creek where she attended Mass every Sunday. No one had seen her since Monday afternoon. She didn't appear on Wednesday either, nor on Thursday. By Friday, the entire community of Harmony Creek was aware of the disappearance. It was impossible to keep something like that a secret in a town where everyone had known each other since childhood. Carol Vance, Eleanor's sister, arrived from the city on Saturday morning on a bus filled with dust and worry. She was 5 years younger than Eleanor, worked as a secretary, and had 2 young children whom she had left in her husband's care to come search for her sister. Carol had the same brown hair as Eleanor, but wore it short and always perfectly styled. She dressed with the formality of a city woman, tailored suits, low-heeled shoes, and a handbag she never let go of. "Eleanor would have called me if she had any problem," Carol told the principal as they searched her sister's house together. "We talked on the phone every Sunday without fail. Last Sunday she told me about her summer vacation plans, about the books she wanted to read, about a training course she planned to attend in August. There was nothing strange in her voice, nothing to indicate she was worried or scared. Eleanor's house was exactly as she had left it. Her bed was made with the military precision that characterized her. Her dresses hung neatly in the closet. Her books were arranged alphabetically on the living room shelf. In the kitchen there was a clean plate and cup in the drying rack, as if she had eaten breakfast normally on Tuesday morning before leaving for school. But Eleanor had never arrived at school. Carol scoured every corner of Harmony Creek over the next few days. She visited Mrs. Rose's bakery, where Ethan saw her speak quietly with his mother, showing her photographs of Eleanor and asking questions that his mother answered with a shake of her head. She went to the market, where the women selling fruits and vegetables surrounded her with expressions of genuine concern, all wanting to help, but having no useful information to offer. "Your sister was a saint," Mrs. Miller, the oldest baker in town, told her. "She always bought sweetbread for the poorest children in her class. On Fridays she would come here and buy a large bag of pastries, and I knew it was to share with the children who didn't bring lunch." Carol also visited the Corner Tap, the town's only bar, where men gathered after work to drink beer and play checkers. It was a place Eleanor would never have entered, but Carol needed to ask everywhere. The men received her with respect, taking off their hats and speaking in low voices. None remembered seeing Eleanor on Monday night or Tuesday morning. The local police force consisted of just 3 officers: Chief Thompson, Officer Davis, and Officer Green. Chief Thompson was a burly 45-year-old man, with a perfectly trimmed gray mustache and a prominent belly that strained the buttons of his uniform. He had been a police officer in Harmony Creek for 15 years and had a reputation for being efficient but lacking in empathy. When Carol presented herself at the police station to formally report her sister's disappearance, Thompson received her in his office, a small, poorly ventilated space decorated with photographs of himself at various official ceremonies. He sat behind his metal desk, lit a cigarette, and listened to Carol's account with an expression that alternated between boredom and condescension. "Look, ma'am," Thompson said after Carol finished speaking, "your sister is an adult woman, single, no children. It's very common for women in that situation to suddenly decide to change their lives. Maybe she met someone, maybe she got tired of small-town life, maybe she wanted to try her luck in the city." Carol felt her blood boil. "Chief, you don't know my sister. Eleanor would never abandon her students without notice. She would never leave without telling me anything. Something happened to her, and I need you to find her." Thompson sighed and extinguished his cigarette in an ashtray full of butts. "We'll do what we can, ma'am. But I'll be honest with you, in cases like this, the person usually reappears on their own when they run out of money or get bored with their new life." The investigation that followed was superficial and disorganized. The three officers visited Eleanor's house, spoke with some neighbors, and took basic statements. They did not check phone records because Eleanor did not have a phone. They did not investigate her bank accounts because the nearest bank was in the neighboring city and required bureaucratic procedures that Thompson considered unnecessary. They did not look for physical clues because they assumed Eleanor had left voluntarily. After 2 weeks, they closed the case as voluntary disappearance. Carol returned to New York City heartbroken and furious, but without legal recourse to force a deeper investigation. In 1999, in small towns like Harmony Creek, the word of the police chief was law, and there were no easily accessible higher authorities for a middle-class secretary. Ethan, meanwhile, lived his own silent grief. Liberty Elementary School had hired Mrs. Patricia Miller as a substitute teacher. Patricia was a 50-year-old woman, strict and traditional, who firmly believed in discipline and punishment as educational methods. Her voice was harsh, her methods rigid, and her presence filled the classroom with tension instead of the warmth Eleanor had cultivated. Every afternoon, when the dismissal bell rang, Ethan would stay a few extra minutes in the empty classroom, waiting to hear the familiar jingle of Eleanor's keyring echoing in the hallways. But the only sound that reached him was the echo of his own footsteps when he finally decided to go home. Months turned into years, and years accumulated like layers of dust over a wound that never quite healed. Ethan grew up carrying the weight of that inexplicable absence, like a shadow that accompanied him everywhere. He finished elementary school with excellent grades but without the guidance and intellectual stimulation that Eleanor had provided. Mrs. Miller never managed to awaken the same passion for learning in him. During high school, Ethan developed a more introverted personality. He was a brilliant but reserved student who preferred books to parties and had few close friends. His parents, Mr. Charles and Mrs. Rose, noticed the change but attributed it to normal adolescence. They did not fully understand the impact Eleanor's disappearance had had on their son. Every June 15th, on the anniversary of the disappearance, Ethan visited the Harmony Creek Municipal Cemetery. Eleanor's family had erected a symbolic grave, a gray marble headstone with her name, dates of birth and disappearance, and an inscription that read, "Beloved teacher, your light continues to shine in our hearts." There was no body beneath, only earth, and the hope that one day Eleanor could truly rest there. Ethan brought wildflowers he picked from the fields outside town, white daisies, red poppies, and aromatic herbs that Eleanor used to decorate the classroom during special celebrations. He would sit on the grass next to the grave and tell her about his life, about his academic achievements, about how he had learned to play the recorder on his own, fulfilling the promise she had been unable to keep. "I got an A in math again, Ms. Eleanor," he would whisper to the wind rustling the leaves of the nearby trees. "You were right when you said that if I understood the basic concepts, everything else would be easy. I also read the book you recommended about the planets. Now I know Jupiter has more than 70 moons." During college, Ethan excelled particularly in mathematics and science. His teachers encouraged him to study engineering, and he decided to specialize in civil engineering, inspired by a deep desire to build things that would last, that would be solid and reliable, unlike people who could disappear without explanation. He studied at the State University. 2 hours from Harmony Creek. During those college years, he returned home every weekend and always stopped by the cemetery to visit Eleanor's grave. His college friends considered him a bit strange for his attachment to his hometown and his habit of talking to himself in the cemetery, but Ethan paid no mind to their opinions. In his third year of college, he met Mary Foster, a psychology student his age, who shared his love for books and deep conversations. Mary was from a nearby city, had long black hair and intelligent green eyes that reminded Ethan of the curiosity Eleanor used to show when he asked her complicated questions. Mary was the first person Ethan told Eleanor's full story to. He did so during a walk on the university campus, on an autumn afternoon when the falling leaves created a golden carpet beneath their feet. He told her about the afternoons he stayed after class, about the extra lessons Eleanor gave him, about the silver key ring that jingled when she walked, about the promise to learn to play the recorder together. "I've never been able to understand what happened," Ethan confessed as they sat on a bench under a jacaranda tree. Eleanor wasn't the type of person to abandon her responsibilities. She loved teaching. She loved her students. Something happened to her, I'm sure, but we'll never know what. Mary listened with the professional attention of someone who studies the human mind, but also with the compassion of someone who was falling in love. Grief for a missing person is different from grief for someone who has passed away, she explained. It's more complicated because there's no closure, no answers. The mind keeps searching, keeps hoping. Ethan and Mary married 2 years after graduating, in a small ceremony at the local church in Harmony Creek. Eleanor was present in spirit. Ethan carried a small photograph of her that he had found in the school archives in his pocket, and during the ceremony he felt she was there, smiling and approving of his choice. The couple settled in Harmony Creek, where Ethan got a job at the municipal office as a public works supervisor. It was a position that allowed him to contribute to the development of his hometown while maintaining a connection to his roots. Mary opened a small psychology practice and quickly earned the community's trust with her warm and professional approach. They had 2 children, Charles, named after his paternal grandfather, and Eleanor, whose name was a unanimous decision that required no discussion. When little Eleanor was born, Ethan took her to the cemetery to introduce her to his teacher. "Look, Miss Eleanor," he said to the headstone while holding his newborn daughter. "She will carry your name and your legacy. I will make sure she grows up with the same curiosity and love for learning that you taught me." Years passed and Harmony Creek gradually changed. New families arrived. Modern houses were built on the outskirts of town. Some streets were paved, and internet was installed in the public library. But the mystery of Eleanor Vance remained like an open wound in the collective memory of the town. Chief Thompson retired in 2010 and was replaced by a younger officer from the state capitol. Thompson bought a larger house on the outskirts of town, where he lived with his wife and enjoyed his pension playing checkers in the town square and having a beer at the Corner Tap. Occasionally, when someone mentioned Eleanor's case, he would repeat his theory that she had decided to start a new life elsewhere. "Single women sometimes do those things," he would keep saying, as if it were a mantra he had memorized. In 2018, Thompson began to show signs of heart problems. His visits to the doctor became more frequent, and his wife, Mrs. Hope, began to worry about his health. On March 12, 2019, while playing checkers in the park with his old friends, Thompson suffered a massive heart attack. He died in the hospital 2 hours later, without having regained consciousness. His funeral was well attended, as befits a man who had served the community for decades. Ethan attended out of respect, although he had never felt sympathy for the former chief. During the ceremony, he watched Mrs. Hope cry beside the coffin and felt a mix of compassion and frustration. Thompson had taken with him any information he might have had about Eleanor. After the funeral, Mrs. Hope decided to sell the house and move with her daughter to the state capitol. "This house is too big for me alone," she explained to the neighbors, "and it holds too many memories." Thompson's house was a 2-story red brick construction, with a spacious yard and a roomy attic that he had used for storage for years. Mrs. Hope hired several local workers to help her clean and prepare the property for sale. Among those workers was Daniel Miller, Ethan's cousin, and an electrician by trade. Daniel was 35 years old, single, and lived with his elderly mother in a house near the market. He was a quiet but reliable man, known in town for his ability to fix any electrical appliance and for his honesty in his charges. On Saturday, June 15, 2019, exactly 20 years after Eleanor's disappearance, Daniel was working at Thompson's house. checking the attic's electrical installation to ensure it was in good condition for future buyers. It was a hot and humid day, with the kind of sticky heat that makes clothes cling to the skin and the air feel thick as molasses. The attic was a large but poorly ventilated space, filled with dusty boxes, old furniture, and objects accumulated over decades. Daniel had brought a portable lamp to illuminate his work, as the attic's only window was obscured by years of dust and cobwebs. As he moved a stack of boxes to access the main electrical panel, one of the heavier boxes toppled over, spilling its contents onto the wooden floor. Daniel cursed under his breath and knelt to pick up the scattered items. Yellowed photographs, official documents, old receipts, a police service medal, and amidst all that clutter, something that made his heart stop completely. It was a small, elegant brown leather purse, the kind professional women used to carry in the 90s. The leather was slightly worn but well preserved, as if it had been carefully looked after before ending up abandoned in that dusty box. Daniel picked it up with trembling hands, immediately sensing that there was something important in this discovery. The purse had a golden clasp that opened with a soft click. Inside, he found several objects that seemed frozen in time. A pale pink lipstick, almost worn down from use, some coins of different denominations, a white cloth handkerchief with the initials EV, embroidered in blue thread, a small silver-framed hand mirror, and at the bottom of the purse, wrapped in a piece of tissue paper, a keyring. When Daniel unwrapped the paper and saw the keyring under the light of his portable lamp, he felt as if the world had stopped spinning. It was a small silver rectangle, elegant and simple, with cursive letters clearly engraved that read, Eleanor Vance. Daniel remained motionless for several minutes, holding the keyring between his fingers as if it were a sacred relic. The attic was steeped in a heavy silence, interrupted only by the distant sound of children playing in the street and the occasional buzz of an insect that had managed to sneak through the dusty window cracks. His mind raced, processing the implications of what he had just discovered. Eleanor Vance, the teacher who had disappeared 20 years ago, whose case had been closed as voluntary disappearance by the very man in whose attic her most intimate belongings now lay. Daniel knew the story because the whole town knew it, but he also had a personal connection. Ethan was his cousin, and he had witnessed the pain Eleanor's disappearance had caused him all these years. With trembling hands, Daniel pulled out his cell phone and dialed Ethan's number. The call connected after 3 rings. Daniel? What's up? Ethan's voice sounded relaxed. He was probably enjoying his Saturday with his family. Ethan. Daniel paused, searching for the right words. You need to come to Chief Thompson's house. I'm here fixing the electrical system, and I found something you have to see. It's about Ms. Eleanor. There was a silence on the other end of the line. When Ethan spoke again, his voice had completely changed. What did you find? I can't explain it over the phone. Just come, please, and Ethan, prepare yourself. I can't explain it over the phone. Just come, please, and Ethan, prepare yourself. 20 minutes later, Ethan arrived at Thompson's house in his white pickup truck, kicking up a small cloud of dust as he braked sharply in front of the driveway. He had left Mary and the children at home, with a vague excuse about helping Daniel with an electrical problem. He didn't want to create expectations or alarm his family until he knew exactly what his cousin had found. Thompson's house looked different without his presence. The windows were open to air out the rooms, the curtains had been taken down for washing, and there was a general sense of abandonment and transition. Mrs. Hope had gone out to run errands, leaving Daniel to work alone. It's in the attic, Daniel told Ethan as they climbed the wooden stairs that creaked under their weight. When you see what I found, you'll understand why I called you. The attic smelled of old dust, dry wood, and something else Ethan couldn't immediately identify. Daniel led him to the corner where he had been working, where the overturned boxes and their scattered contents created a chaotic landscape of unfamiliar memories. I was moving these boxes to get to the electrical panel, Daniel explained, pointing towards the back of the attic. One of them tipped over and, look. Ethan followed his cousin's gaze and saw the brown leather purse on an old blanket Daniel had spread on the floor. His heart began to beat faster, though he still didn't fully understand the magnitude of what he was seeing. Open it, Daniel said softly. Open it, Daniel said softly. With hands that began to tremble, Ethan knelt and picked up the purse. It was heavier than he expected, and the leather had that soft texture that only comes with years of careful use. When he opened the golden clasp, the scent that wafted from inside immediately transported him 20 years back. It was a subtle mix of floral perfume, blackboard chalk, and something indefinably feminine that he associated with Eleanor's presence. One by one, Ethan took the objects out of the purse. The pale pink lipstick immediately reminded him of how Eleanor used to discreetly touch up her lips during recess, using the small mirror on her desk. The coins were of denominations no longer in circulation, relics of a different economic era. The handkerchief with the embroidered initials was exactly the kind of elegant and personal detail Eleanor used to carry. But when his fingers found the key ring wrapped in tissue paper, Ethan felt the world stop completely. He unwrapped it slowly, as if it were a bomb that could explode at any moment. And when he saw the engraved letters, Eleanor Vance, a strange sound escaped his throat, something between a moan and a sigh. "My God," he murmured, holding the key ring up to the light filtering through the dusty window. "It's Eleanor's key ring. I remember it perfectly. She always wore it on her wrist, and when she walked through the halls, it made that sound, that soft jingle we all recognized." Daniel watched his cousin in silence, understanding that he was witnessing a moment of profound and painful revelation. "What do you think it means that it's here, in Thompson's house?" Ethan closed his eyes and for a moment could see Eleanor again, her warm smile, her floral dresses, the way she leaned over his desk to help him with difficult math problems, how the key ring shone under the fluorescent light of the classroom when she gestured while explaining a lesson. "It means Thompson knew what happened to Eleanor," Ethan said in a hoarse voice. "It means that for 20 years that man lied. He lied to her family, he lied to the town, he lied to all of us." The two men remained silent for several minutes, processing the implications of what they had discovered. The attic seemed to have grown quieter, as if the house itself were holding its breath. "What are we going to do?" Daniel finally asked. "What are we going to do?" Daniel finally asked. Ethan carefully put all the objects back into the purse but kept the key ring in his hand. "First, we're going to document all of this. Take pictures of where you found the purse, of the boxes, of everything. Then I need to think." For the next 2 hours, the cousins worked meticulously to document the discovery. Daniel took photographs from multiple angles, showing the exact position where he had found the purse, the contents of the overturned boxes, and every individual object inside Eleanor's purse. Ethan wrote detailed notes on his phone, recording the date, time, and exact circumstances of the finding. When they finished, they sat on the attic floor, surrounded by the evidence of a truth that had remained hidden for 2 decades. "Are you going to call the police?" Daniel asked. "Are you going to call the police?" Daniel asked. Ethan shook his head slowly. "The current police force isn't the same as 20 years ago. The new chief is young, came from out of town, he has no connection to this case, and Thompson can no longer answer for what he did. But Eleanor deserves justice." "Eleanor deserves the truth," Ethan corrected, "and her family deserves to know what really happened. But legal justice, that's more complicated. 20 years have passed, Thompson is dead, and we don't have evidence of what exactly happened to Eleanor. We just know that Thompson had her belongings." Daniel nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. "What are you going to do then?" Daniel nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. "What are you going to do then?" Ethan stood up and walked to the attic window. He wiped the dust from the glass with his shirt sleeve and looked out at the town stretching below. He could see Liberty Elementary School in the distance, with its yellow walls and blue windows where Eleanor had taught with such passion and dedication. "I'm going to find Carol, Eleanor's sister," he finally said. "She deserves to know the truth. After that, we're going to give Eleanor the recognition she deserves, not as a victim, but as the extraordinary teacher she was." That night, Ethan sat in his home study, with Eleanor's keyring on his desk. Mary had noticed his somber mood and had asked him what had happened, but he had asked her for a little time to process everything before speaking. Ethan opened his laptop and began searching for information about Carol Vance. It wasn't difficult to find her. She still lived in New York City, now worked as a supervisor in a government office, and had a Facebook account where she occasionally posted photographs of her children, who were now young adults. He wrote her a private message, carefully worded. "Dear Ms. Carol, my name is Ethan Miller. I was a student of your sister Eleanor at Liberty Elementary School in Harmony Creek. I know many years have passed, but I have found something I believe you will be interested to know about Eleanor. Could we speak by phone? It's important." He sent the message and stared at the screen, wondering how Carol would react after so many years of silence and unanswered questions.